Assuming that this vote does get handed early next week, look, Democrats are pouncing on this. They're saying it's only going to benefit rich people. How do you sell this moving forward?
Well, I mean, think about it, right? What you were just covering, which is truthful, that Senator Rubio, who I respect a lot, thinks that the equality of the tax bill or redistribution of the tax bill is more desirable if there's an expanded child credit. It's something that he's pushed hard for. There's a big expansion of the child credit. I mean, there's no way that that benefits the rich, and that's one of the biggest revenue losers in the tax bill. And so, for sure, every time we try to fix the tax code, Democrats are out there saying, oh, geez, it's a giveaway to the rich. And the end result of that is that here we are, the least competitive place on earth with the highest corporate tax rate. And so finally, we've broken through that mess, and we're about to have a tax bill that's really a historic accomplishment for the people on the Hill and for President Trump.
But why did they need to cut the top individual rate to 37%, even lower than the Senate or the House tax bills?
Yeah, I think that the people up on the Hill were balancing a lot of things, including having a lower corporate rate and worry about pass-throughs. And there was definitely a debate at the end about the fact that big pass-throughs that are exposed to the top rate might be disadvantaged vis-a-vis C corporations. And I think that they worked out a compromise that everybody up there is at least happy enough with. I think we're pretty sure we're going to have a bill that's passed next week.
Is President Trump happy with the corporate tax rate coming to 21% and not 20%?
President Trump is extremely happy that we've got a bill that's very, very close to the original design. He started out wanting a 15% rate, and then he went to 20. And I was on your show a while ago saying 20 is non-negotiable. So I'm a little surprised we went to 21. But gosh, going from 35 to 21 is one of the biggest accomplishments, really, in fiscal policy history. I think you'd have to go all the way back to the early Reagan tax cuts to find a tax bill that's going to have such a big economic effect.
Kevin, let me stick with this topic of the pass-through rate because, as you know, Democrats are saying that this, is only going to benefit large corporations, but there are a lot of small business owners who qualify as pass-throughs. And I guess,
sure.
I know it's a wonky term, but get in the weeds here. How does lowering of the pass-through rate, we always talk about the corporate tax rate, but how does the lowering of the pass-through rate directly impact LLC small businesses in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio?
Right. I think that the thing that I find most heartening in the bill, and as you know, it wasn't true at the beginning, is that the NFIB is a big supporter of this bill. And the NFIB is the Association of Small Businesses. I would say their average member has probably got income $50,000 to $75,000 a year. And those are the people that really are the heart of America. They're the place that generates a lot of the job creation and the innovation and entrepreneurship that drives our economy. And so, cutting the rate for small businesses down in that space, I think, is going to change something that I think is one of the things that troubles me the most as an economist looking at the evolution of our economy, which is that entrepreneurship is really waning, that millennials are the least entrepreneurial generation in American history, and now hopefully with these lower tax cuts that we can reverse that a little bit.
Kevin, let's talk a little bit about deregulation because many of the Republicans' financial numbers for growth, for the growth number being boosted, comes from deregulation, and President Trump also touting those numbers. Take a listen first.
Sure.
For the first time in decades, we achieved regulatory savings. Hasn't happened in many decades. We blew our target out of the water. Within our first 11 months, we canceled or delayed over 1,500 planned regulatory actions, more than any previous president by far.
You've talked about deregulation as well, but the bulk of what the president has done comes from getting rid of a pending regulation, dormant regulation that would never have really made it through the system anyway. So how feasible is it to expect deregulation to be fast enough to boost and help growth?
And I'm with you on that, that I've been a little bit surprised at how big the positive growth effects of our deregulatory efforts appear to be this year. And I think that after we studied at CEA, one of the things we found is that by holding off those new regulations, that we've taken a huge amount of pressure off of America's businesses. Because imagine if you and I were running a firm and then all of a sudden Washington gave us a new regulation that we had to adhere to, then what would happen would be we'd have to hire all these lawyers and get our best people to study the thing and figure out how are we going to change our business plan. But by putting those things on hold, those 1,500 things on hold, what we've done is given some breathing room for America's firms to focus on, their businesses and selling more stuff and hiring more workers, and that's what they've been doing.
Still, killing existing regulations will be hard. You have to deal with the law. So how do you expect that to help the tax cuts and help growth in general for next year?
Yeah, sure, and that's definitely something that we're going to continue to focus on. But don't forget that a lot of these regulations are not written specifically as laws, but rather Congress tells the regulator, hey, you shall go out and regulate in this space and do it well, and then the regulator has to decide what that means. And so the president's appointees, his cabinet members, have a lot of discretion to go out there and make the regulations while watching out to make sure that we're still having a clean environment and a safe place to work and so on, to making the regulations more efficient. And I think that that's one of his top priorities. And if you just look at the economic growth that we're seeing right now, you can see that it's working. You know, that right now the nowcast for the fourth quarter from the New York Fed is that it's going to be about 4%, and first quarter is probably going to carry momentum like that as well. And so when President Trump was elected, everybody said, oh, we're stuck at 2% growth forever, it's secular stagnation, there's nothing we can do. And now already with the steps we've taken, we've moved to the economy where it's close to a 4% growth rate.
And there are a lot of people on the dereg front who are very anxious to see what you guys come up with the first quarter of next year on community banking regulatory relief. But I want to stick with tax reform because that's the big subject here in Washington that everyone's trying to figure out in terms of a timetable. But play it forward for me, Kevin. Let's say we get to the spring and we take up entitlement reform. Is that going to be a potential, I don't want to say to fix things in this tax plan, but how might that play in regards to the tax plan that likely will get voted on and passed early next week?
Right. Well, I think that the next two things that are up that, you know, we've been working on since I got here to the White House last summer are infrastructure and welfare reform. And, you know, we've been having meetings on both. And I think that you're going to see a lot of details about our plans for that probably by the State of the Union.
What form would entitlement reform take?
Well, that's something that we're still working on. I've even got, some meetings later today where we're going over some stuff. But the fact is that absolutely it's, the next thing that's up. The president's talked about that. And, stay tuned. I'm sure that you're going to see that we've got a lot of really good ideas about how to move forward, and hopefully even in a bipartisan fashion.
Infrastructure reform by next year. We're hearing plans would come out by January. Is that still the case?
I'm not the scheduler. I don't even know what my schedule looks like next week. But you could ask the press office about that. But I definitely know that the president has promised that welfare reform and infrastructure are next. And the other thing I know about this president is he keeps his promises.
And in terms of tax reform, there have been some Republicans, as you know, who have questioned if whether or not this would spend too much money or how to do all of that. But what's your response to Republicans who likely are coalescing right now behind, and this likely will get done early next week, but to folks who have concern about deficits, what do you say to them?
Well, just think about how much growth the president's agenda has delivered already this year, and then just imagine that kind of growth can be continued for a few years. Then there's going to be so much more revenue than we were forecast to have as the president took office that the deficit problems will clearly be, much weakened by the growth. And so, absolutely, in the end, we have to watch out for exploding deficits. We got to make sure that the growth that we expect our policies will deliver is there. But I think that there's so much evidence that we should have confidence that we'll get the growth, and it's even, in the markets, it's in the data. If you look at the nowcast for fourth quarter, it's above 4%, and so we're seeing so much evidence that the plans are working that I think that we should sit back now and watch the revenue roll in as it normally does when GDP grows that much.